Grab whatever beverage you want. I won't ask, and you don't have to tell. You can if you want, but let's get into some discussion about the coaching industry and what it's like and what it's going to take to succeed after COVID. As you come on in, if you're with us live or you are watching the replay, I imagine you are live. Whether the broadcast is currently live or you're watching the replay, let us know as you come on in, and let me know where you are logging in from so that we can see the places all around the globe that you all are coming from. All right, so I want to give you a little bit of a forecast of what we're going to do today in this training, and then we're going to jump right into it. So we're going to talk about 5 tips that I have for you for succeeding as a coach post-COVID. Not that COVID is necessarily over, but what the world is like after this COVID experience that we all have. And we're going to be talking, we're going to be diving into the 5 tips toward the end, or like the back half of the video. And we're really going to dive into it, right? And we want you to ask questions. So put a Q. If you have questions, you can put a Q in the comment section wherever you're watching this, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're watching it on Facebook or whatever it is that you're watching it, put a Q in front of it so that we can see it. And one of the things that you already know, if you've watched a lot of our videos before, is that we teach for understanding. We don't teach for regurgitation. And my invitation to you is that you learn for understanding, not for regurgitation. And those two things are wildly different. You need to learn like a leader if you want to be a leader. Most people learn like followers because that's how we're taught to learn. We're taught to learn and then regurgitate. We're taught to learn so that we can memorize, so that we can impress somebody with the things that we remember. That's not learning like a leader. Learning like a leader is about embodiment and truly understanding. Knowledge does not equal understanding. So if you are a leader, you are a teacher. And if you are a teacher, you need to teach from understanding, not just knowledge. Because if you don't understand what you're teaching and all you're doing is regurgitating and memorizing something, your students will know, they won't be interested, because we can feel leadership. So I want you to learn like a leader and focus on understanding, not just memorization, not just, oh, I've heard this before. Is it in your body? Is it something that's a habit? Do you do this work? So we're going to talk about the truth, we always do that. What it takes to succeed, not just as a coach, but as a coach in this world that we live in right now. And unfortunately, there's a lot of trainings that people are searching for and trainings that people are delivering that are giving a lot of false positives, I would say. If you want to go to the moon, you have to understand the moon operates different than the earth. So if you want to build a business, you have to understand that building a business is not like having a job. There's a different environment up there. So if you want to go to the moon, but you don't have your suit, you'll die on the moon. If you want to go to the moon and you don't understand gravity, you'll float away. The lack of gravity on the moon, you'll float away and you'll die in space. If you want to do something, you have to have the knowledge, you have to have the muscles, you have to have the preparation, you have to have the understanding of what that is. If not, you can't win in that new environment. And being an entrepreneur is a new environment, and being an entrepreneur post-COVID is a new environment. It'll be new for you and it's new for them. And entrepreneurship is already new according to the way that most of us learn. So these are my philosophies, and I've learned these philosophies from a long time in this industry of personal development, and specifically in this industry of coaching. If you don't know who I am, I've been doing this work for about 17 years. I've been helping coaches for probably 12 to 13 of those years. We've made millions and millions of dollars in this industry. And I'm constantly focused on what works from a realistic standpoint, what works for people, not what might work or what hopefully will work. What does work? What has worked for me, what has worked for other people. So everything I teach comes from experience. And when you teach looking back, it's different than what we're searching for looking forward, or what I was looking for going forward when I was relatively new in this industry. So I'm essentially coming to you as a reporter of what causes most coaches to fail. What do I see in the industry that's relevant to this post-pandemic world, and how the industry has changed, social programming has changed, and what can we do to meet the moment with what actually works and what you need as a leader and as a coach. And I just want to say that the majority of people are not succeeding because they're not learning what they need to succeed. They're potentially learning what they want to succeed, or what they want to be true about success, but they're really not learning what's necessary to succeed in the entrepreneurial world. And we see this because most people are looking for, or the way that we recognize this is that most people are looking for what's right to do and what's wrong not to do. There's no such thing as right and wrong in the entrepreneurial game. No such thing. You need to let those definitions go, at least the way they're defined in the employee world, in the regurgitation world, in the let me learn and put it on the test world so that I can get a grade. No such thing as right or wrong. There's only alignment. Something is aligned and it'll help you get what you want, or it's not aligned and it won't. And most of us are searching for the right and wrong, and we're fully misaligned with what it is that we actually want or who it is that we are. And therefore, we're not able to build anything really stable or sustainable or substantial, because we don't have alignment in our chase of what's right and wrong. So again, learn like a leader. Leaders don't believe in right and wrong, at least, again, not in the dichotomous definitions of this is right and that is wrong, because what's right in a certain situation with a certain person is absolutely wrong with that same person in a different situation, or the same situation and a different person, or a different person and a different situation. Leaders don't think about just static rules of right and wrong. Leaders are able to assess the environment, assess the variables, and then make an aligned decision. So you can't search for what's right and wrong. There's no shortcut to the entrepreneurial game. There's no shortcut to mastery. You can't microwave mastery. That's what most people are doing. You can microwave memorization. You can microwave commodities. You cannot microwave mastery. So you've got to be in this process correctly if you want to build what I believe most of you want to build. And I speak from the experience of and the intention of changing lives as a coach, not selling information as a coach. There's nothing wrong with selling information as a coach. The majority of the stuff I say that's related to you as a leader isn't necessarily required if you're selling information as a coach. But what I've learned is that information has never changed a human life. If you want to change lives, you need to facilitate and understand implementation. You need to facilitate and understand transformation, and you need to go through it in order to facilitate and teach it. So that's this distinct choice that you have. You're either going to go this way or you're going to go that way. If you're focused on growth, you have to be in the process of growth a certain way. If you're only focused on comfort and selling information, then you don't need to watch the rest of this video, because it's not going to be relevant to you if what you want to do is just play at the surface level. I don't have any judgment around that, but the majority of people are following surface level recipes, but then they're getting frustrated because they're either not able to develop deep success, or they're not able to enjoy it or feel a sense of fulfillment because they're just following the surface level stuff. So that's where all of this is coming from. And at a high level, I was thinking about this last night, and I want to give you the two biggest problems that I see at a very high level. Of course, there's all kinds of details and variables, but at a very high level, I want to give you the biggest strategic problem I see and the biggest skill set problem I see. The biggest strategic problem is that we are seeking, and therefore we are being taught primarily what to think and what to do. We're not being taught how to think about what to do. We're not being taught how to think and how to decide what we should do. So therefore, we're just essentially following instructions. And if you're following instructions, you cannot be a leader. There's no such thing as a leader who only follows instructions. If you follow instructions, it will never lead to independence. It will always only lead to dependence. Because even if you follow the instructions properly, and even if it works for you and generates success, as soon as you're done with that list of instructions, you need a new list of instructions. You need somebody else to say, okay, thank you. After you've done that, now good job, pat you on the head. Now do this. There's a safety that we feel emotionally in following instructions, and there's a danger that we feel emotionally in learning how to think. But those are dichotomous choices, meaning you're either going to choose that or you're going to choose that. Learn like a leader. What produces the immediate sexy success of following instructions actually doesn't produce long-term stability or viability or independence. So that's the biggest strategic problem that I see. And we've been kind of rising up over the last really 6 months and taking a look from a higher level. What's the actual issue? What's the problem? And what most people are doing is they're learning rules inside of the restriction of what to think and what to do. And it just can't produce what most people are actually wanting to experience in life. The biggest skill set problem that I see is people working on symptoms, but not working on systems. People wanting paying coaching clients, but not understanding and therefore not working on the systems that produce paying coaching clients. And these are internal systems. These are systems of certainty, systems of confidence, systems of communication, systems of marketing, messaging. There's all kinds of external stuff, and there's internal stuff. If you don't create the systems that can produce the results, then the best thing you can do is hope to change the symptoms momentarily and temporarily. Because even if you change the symptom of a system, but you don't change the system will reproduce the symptoms that it's designed for. So this whole thing is about, this whole thing meaning my philosophies, this training, this idea of creating success, especially post-pandemic, this whole thing is about stability. It's about sustainability. It's about understanding. It's about depth. It's about foundation. It's about fundamentals. We live in a world now that has been completely disrupted. What we need is to re-foundation what we want to build upon. The world needs to be re-foundationed. And anything you want to do in business as an entrepreneur, especially as a coach, and even more so as a leader, it must be built on foundation. And when the world gets disrupted or any system gets disrupted, there's a bigger need for the foundation because the system was disrupted. If you think about an earthquake, the earth shakes up at the top, but the reason the earth shakes up at the top and we feel the rumbling, if you've ever been through an earthquake, I know not everybody has, but if you can imagine this, we feel the rumbling of the earthquake on the surface of the earth. That's all caused by plates deep, deep, deep down out of foundation with themselves. They shift because they can't sustain the tension. And when they shift, then the eruption is felt above the surface. And what needs to happen in order for the earth to stop shaking is below the surface, the tectonic plates need to re-foundation themselves. And then the earth can stop shaking. What most of us are doing is we don't understand what's going on underneath here. We're just trying to stop the shaking above the surface. What we have to understand, though, is every time there's shaking up here and there's disruption, when we re-foundation and restabilize what's underneath, we're actually stronger than we were before the disruption. We're stronger than we were because we have evolved. One of the biggest mistakes most people are making that I see is in the coaching industry is you're trying to get back to what worked before March of 2020 when the whole world was sent to its room, right? It's like we were put on punishment, right? And then all the things that happened after that. And there's a survival in the air. There's a lot of fear in the air. People are literally dying. People don't know who to trust. The instruments and the institutions that we were supposed to trust, they failed us. They let us down. We didn't know what to do. The whole world was in a state of confusion. So the worst thing, one of the worst things you can do is try to go back to that. Try to go back to where people were before all of this. There are concepts, of course, there are fundamentals, of course, that we can get back to, but we need to restabilize going forward for what we're dealing with now and who we are dealing with now as humans. So we're going to dive into a lot more of the details of all of this. Before we go on, Michelle, why don't you come on in? Because I know this idea of what to think versus how to think was a huge piece of your journey, and it was a big realization for you recently. And so please, whatever you want to share about, if there was anything you recognize looking back at what helped that or what results you got immediately when you made that shift, whatever you want to share about that concept, please do.
I think we were 3 minutes in the video and I think I did, like in the air, slap you across the face. For those of you that are listening to this, before I answer that question that you just asked, please go back and re-listen to the beginning of this. If these concepts are new, even not the first time you heard them, if they're new to you, you've got to get them in your brain like multiple times. Like you have to, this is an opportunity for you to listen and learn like a leader. Okay, so I was the person that you were talking about, Sean, right? So I was the person that Sean was speaking to about wanting instructions. I was the person who wanted to do what was right, who was terrified of doing anything wrong at all. I was in constant search of the instructions because I was so afraid of what would happen if I didn't do the right thing. I didn't trust myself at all. I didn't trust myself with myself. I didn't trust myself with my thoughts. I didn't trust myself with my actions or my choices. And I'll say this, I wasn't conscious of that at the time. So I wasn't walking around being like, oh, I don't trust myself. I just can say this looking back, right? We use a phrase, looking back wisdom. I can look at what I wasn't doing. I could look at the fact that I wasn't creating until I had approval. I can look at the fact that I wouldn't make a decision unless I knew that somebody else was okay with it. I wouldn't state my opinion until I got a feel or a pulse. And let me know in the chat if you relate to any of this. Like until I got a pulse of the room, right? I had to know what other people were thinking before I said what I had to say, right? I wanted to do a bunch of research and figure out, well, what's everybody else doing before I decided to do what I wanted to do. And before I go on, this isn't to say you don't do research, you don't have conversations, you don't discuss things with other people. It's the order I was doing it in, right? I wasn't making any decisions for myself until I knew what decision was going to be safe to make. And what I found in that is that I wasn't doing very much. I wasn't creating a lot. I was very, very bold, or I wasn't very bold. I was very, very timid with my offers, with my proposals. My ideas were very, safe. They were universal. They were, palatable for everybody. And what I've learned, especially, this has really been a shift for me since the end of last year and a lot like in this year, in 2022 here, is that the most irritating and impactful teachers and leaders in my life are the people who taught me not what to do, because then I've got to be tethered to them for forever. If the only time I make a move is if Sean tells me what to do, then if Sean's not there, I'm in trouble. I don't move at all. I'm completely frozen because I've got nobody leading me. I'm literally like, like a kid or a dog that's like on a little leash, like attached. And I don't have any agency to move on my own. And listen, I get it, because it felt this way, like I just shared already. Knowing what to do felt safer. It felt easier, but it was not sustainable at all. I craved it because I was so scared of being wrong, so scared of being punished, of getting in trouble. And what this had me do is I was then just chasing scripts and templates and step-by-step plans. Like, what do I need to say? What's the right thing to do? I was learning to memorize. I'm gonna be real with that. I was learning to memorize because I didn't trust my own thoughts. So I had to just regurgitate yours. I was just constantly asking, like, what are they doing? Okay, Sean said that and he didn't get in trouble, so I can say that too, right? Or this other teacher said that and they didn't get in trouble. And that for me, I didn't realize it was suffocating me, my creativity, my identity, my own self-expression. And so what I've learned is that understanding how to think, like, instead of asking, what did you say right there? I want to know, okay, how are you looking at this? What variables are you considering? Tell me about your experience. What are some of the different ways that you thought about this? And then I can take those strategies and I can think about my own situation and my own details independently. And then I can make decisions for my own self, for my own business. And then I can learn my lessons. And honestly, I can go back to my mentors, to my teachers, to my coaches and say, okay, so here's how I thought about this. Here's the decision I made. Well, tell me your feedback, right? And so now I'm still in that conversation, but I'm coming with my own ideas for collaboration instead of going to for validation and affirming and for you to tell me what I'm supposed to do, what the right thing is. It's a game changer. So liberating. And I didn't even know I was stuck. That's the thing. I think a lot of us don't even realize in the moment that we're trapped in our quest for this, our craving for this. Somebody tell me what the not wrong thing to do is. We're literally like in a coffin that we close the door on and we're holding the latch on. And we're waiting for somebody else to come and open it up for us. And even when they try, we latch down harder.
Yeah, you said a lot there. A lot of people are loving it. And I appreciate Greg's comment right there, because he uses your capitalization model too. We're joking, Greg. That's more of an inside joke than anything about you. One of the things that Michelle used to really be afraid of is grammar rules.
Being stupid.
And not being smart in how to capitalize things and how to punctuate things and so forth. And so after she made this shift that she's talking about, one of the things that really opened up is like, I write the way I write. Mm-hmm. And the people that need to hear it are not going to be concerned about my use of semicolons or capitalization. Right. So there's so much that you just touched on there, and so much that needs to be done when you learn and listen. I'm glad you added that word earlier. You listen like a leader.
Yeah. Instead
of listening like a follower. We've never been as clear. I've never been as clear in my 17 years. And we've never been as clear as a company. And Michelle and I have never been as clear in these conversations as we are now. And it's really just been over the last several months that we've been dissecting and discussing and looking from so many different angles and having somebody else help us pull stuff out of our own awareness, that it's actually become so simple. There are a lot of distinctions that are, you're either this or you're that. Yeah. If you're learning like a follower, leadership is not possible for you. If you're learning only like a student, teaching is not possible for you. Now, learning like a follower is part of the process of becoming a leader. But if you're only in the game as a follower because you're afraid of doing the not, or because you're afraid of doing the wrong thing, therefore you're only learning the not wrong things, then you can never graduate into leadership. If you're only learning as a student because you're so afraid of teaching the wrong thing, then you can never graduate into being a teacher. So you need to be in this game with a long-term vision of growth in mind. And then you can learn through the following phases. You can learn through the studenting phases. You can learn through the memorizing phases, because those are a part of mastery level learning. It's just not all of learning. And most of us never graduate past that because we don't see that there's something much, much bigger here. So if you are in the game to learn as a master level teacher, then you will move through the milestones of success. But if all you're looking for is to hit the milestones of success and you're not committed to mastery, or you're not committed to long-term, or you're not committed to sustainability, then even if you hit the milestones of success, you'll never be able to go beyond there, because you just keep bumping up against this ceiling that we're talking about. And there are so many distinctions. You know, Michelle mentioned chasing versus creating. That's one that we'll get into a little bit later in this video, because it's one of the things that we really need you to understand. Chasers cannot lead. Chasers have a finite ceiling of growth. Only creators can grow past that. So we're going to dive into more of this, and there's so many topics to go deep with. We did 25 straight days of videos recently. Some of you were on those videos. If you haven't seen the videos, or you want to learn like a leader and learn them again and check for understanding, then they can all be found at a playlist that we'll drop here in the comment section. And the playlist has 25 different videos. If you haven't watched the videos, you can just go through the titles, obviously, and see which ones are really jumping out to you and dive in. People can tell, especially, well, I believe we've always been able to tell the difference between a true leader and somebody who is a fake leader. So, and that doesn't mean that people are intending to misrepresent themselves, or people are intending to lie. Some of them are, but most of them I don't think are. I think people, we're doing the best we can. Several people have already mentioned some version of we're taught to follow. We are taught how to regurgitate. We're taught to learn like students, obviously. The schooling system is not designed to produce leaders. The schooling system is designed to produce followers. It's designed to produce people that will find their place in the machine of society. That's what the schooling system is primarily designed to do. So this isn't a values judgment against people. This is the way that we as humans are socialized. It's the way we're programmed. It's the way we're taught. So none of you are like less than, or you're a loser, or you don't have discipline, or you're not motivated. If you've got this programming in you, what it means is you're a normal human that went through the normal socialization of human learning. If you don't have that programming being the restrictive, reactive, do as I say, don't rock the boat, follow the rules, otherwise you're going to get punished. I mean, that's another thing. I don't think we've talked about that in the context of following rules as entrepreneurs. What happens if we break rules? We literally get punished as children in our homes, or in other social environments, or in school. If you don't follow the rules, you get punished. That's one of the things that most of us have learned at a deep level. So how do we know what not to do if we don't know the rules? That's why one of the first things we want to know when we go into any new environment is, what are the rules here?
That's right.
What are the rules? Because I don't want to get punished. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to be asked to leave. I don't want to get hit. I don't want to get yelled at. I don't want to get embarrassed. What are the rules? And we've stepped into this entrepreneurial endeavor where rules don't exist, only laws exist, and we search for the rules. That's one of the ways that we get into the game wrong. And again, I'm using wrong as misaligned. We get into the game in a way that will never produce what it is that we're wanting to produce. So
No.
let's dive in a little bit deeper. It's so hard for us to start talking about any one of these subjects because there's so much depth, especially if your goal is understanding it, or if our goal is getting you to understand it. But we're going to go deep on a few topics here. We're just not going to be able to go deep on the 30 to 35 muscles that need to be built for most entrepreneurs. So many of you know that we've got a program going on. We just started it a few weeks ago. It's called eSchool for Coaches. The E stands for entrepreneur. It's all these things that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Entrepreneur School for Coaches. And this is a long program. This is a year-long program because what we're wanting to pace you through is the deep work of understanding and stability and foundation and fundamentals and systems and habits and all the things at a deeper level. It's the 90% of the iceberg underneath the water that you don't see that's required to produce what we do see above the water. So this is about doing the deeper work. It's about becoming more creative. It's about developing your self-trust. We'll dive into that. Michelle touched on that for a little bit. It's one of the biggest things in the entrepreneurial journey.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the things that are missing. It's what most coaches don't develop. And it's primarily because most of us don't know what we need to develop. Right. So again, there's no shame. There's no judgment on what, because at a certain point, I didn't know any of this stuff either. Michelle didn't know any of this stuff either. So this is just what we notice does work, what's missing, and what people actually need. So if you are a coach now, or you want to be a coach, if you're somebody who has a lot of certainty in your skill set, maybe you've gotten a certification, or you just naturally gifted and certain in your skill set. By the way, people asking you for advice doesn't mean you have coaching skills. There are professional, deep dive, mastery level coaching skills that are not the same as people asking you what they should do with their life, or you delivering advice. And I don't mean to take anything away from any of you that's not delivered with shame or judgment or any of that sort of stuff, but coaching is a different game. It's not just telling people what to do. Actually, it's not telling people what to do at all, especially if you're into transformational, deep work, inside out coaching like we've been talking about. So if you have a lot of certainty, but you're not creating the results that you want, it's probably because you don't have the entrepreneurial identity, or you don't have the entrepreneurial creativity to come out. You're not yet a creator. You're probably more of a reactor. You're probably more of a chaser. And all of that is fine. We just need to know what are the muscles and the skills and the embodiment that you need to go to the next level if you want to be a transformational entrepreneur. And that's different. Transformational entrepreneurship is different than commodity entrepreneur, or just being a business owner, or opening up a bakery or something. None of those things are wrong. It's just, if you want a certain type of thing, then you need the muscles for that thing. So we also see a lot of people who are lacking those skills. And a lot of times those skills, the certainty meaning of your coaching, if you're lacking the certainty, a lot of times it's a internal visibility issue, or you might not have certainty or confidence in yourself, which means you need to develop some of the internal work. That's what eSchool is designed to do. If you're just not having the success that you want, you don't have the money, you feel like you should be having more results based on what you do and based on what you know, I'm telling you, there are pieces of the recipe that are missing. And that's what we're wanting to deliver, and we are delivering in eSchool. I know we have some people on now that are in eSchool. So if any of you want to share, we're not going to bring any of you on to talk now, but if any of you want to share in the comment section, then please do. Any results or any reactions that you have to eSchool. We've done it for just a few weeks so far, and some of the things that people are reporting are actually really, really powerful. People doing their first Facebook Live ever, their first interview ever, their first articles published. People are, one person said, I joined yesterday and today I started to record content, and now I know who my target client is. Like, these shifts can actually produce very quick momentum. And we got to get out of our way, and we got to follow the momentum. We got to take action, obviously, to produce the results that we want. But in eSchool, there are three main components that need to come together. You need to have an entrepreneurial identity. You need to have entrepreneurial creativity. And then you need entrepreneurial strategy. Almost everybody is looking for the strategy in the form of, what do I do and what do I not do? Yeah, just what you were talking about, the right thing and the wrong thing, following directions from somebody else who's not selling the product you want to sell, not selling it to the people you want to serve, and not anything like you. But yet we follow those recipes and go, oh, that worked for that person. I'm nothing like them, selling something different to somebody different, but maybe that recipe will work for me too. Of course it can't, because all the variables are different, right? Only one variable needs to be different in a recipe. All you need to do is replace sugar with flour, and your cookies are going to taste different, or a lot different, right? So if one variable changes, the entire recipe might not work. And the recipes that most coaches are following have so many variables that are, again, misaligned. It's not right or wrong. It's just misaligned. And most people are searching for this destination. eSchool is about development. We want to develop you as a leader. We don't want to just force you as a follower into a certain destination. But that's what a lot of people are searching for. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are experiencing, I think you wrote this in the notes, Michelle, that entrepreneurial disorientation.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial disorientation. I want to open that up here for a moment or two. Entrepreneurial disorientation.
Yeah.
That's so important to understand. Go ahead and speak to that for a moment, and I'll jump in with my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's just we're so, most of us, many of us, I'd say, are so overwhelmed with all of the information, and without knowing who we are, and without like knowing where we're starting from. One of the things you mentioned a moment ago, Sean, was that as it pertains to being a chaser or a creator, right? It's not, there's no shame or there's no judgment. It's fine. You just have to know where you are. And it's not only fine, entrepreneurs have to be self-honest. We have to self-identify. And so many times we're just like, well, no, I don't want to look at that thing. So yes, I'm a creator, right? Because it feels better, because saying I'm a chaser doesn't feel good. But the reality is, if you're not honest with yourself, you don't have the capacity to be honest with anybody else. Even if you think you're a good performer, I thought I was a good performer. You just can't, because you're not even honest with yourself. And then if you're not honest with yourself, then you're going to be looking for strategies that are for like the not honest version of you, and they're not going to work. Right. So it doesn't have to be an emotional, judgmental self-identification. I'm a loser. No, it's just, oh, I'm a chaser. Okay, cool. That's where I'm at in the journey. Now what's my next step? And if you know where you are, that makes it so much easier. But I think a lot of the disorientation comes because we don't know where we are, because we won't look at it, because for a lot of us, it doesn't feel good. And if we're in that pattern, then we're like trying to figure out where we are and where we're going. And there's all this moving stuff around us. It reminds me of when I was in LA and I got dropped off at the wrong terminal at LAX. And there were so many people. And if you've never been to LAX, it's a huge airport. I've been there multiple times, but it's not like my home base airport. And there were all these people moving around. I was in the completely wrong terminal. I was not, didn't give myself hours, right, to be able to figure out where I was. And I was super disoriented. I didn't know where to go. I literally couldn't think logically. Okay, let me stop. Let me ask someone who works here. Like my brain, I completely shut down because I was so disoriented. And I see that happening so often with so many coaches, because they're in the same situation. They don't know who they are. They don't know the environment that they're in. There's so many moving parts around them that they're just standing there and just kind of, if they run into it, then they are like, oh, that must be the thing that is for me. And it's incredibly hard to find any stability or make any intelligent, like, well thought out decisions, because we're in this completely disoriented state.
Yeah, it truly, it's different than being confused. It's different than just being overwhelmed. It's different than not knowing what to do. the disoriented state is it's just a different place to be for the mind. And therefore, even when we're getting instructions, we're either going to chase the wrong one, or we won't be able to implement the right one. You know, I remember a person who surfs big waves, like 40, 50-foot waves, teaching us about what it takes on all kinds of levels, you know, courage and the physicality of it and so forth. And he said, one of the things that happens is when you fall on a big wave like that, the undertow is so strong, you can't comprehend it. And if any of you've been surfing or you've just been out in the ocean and you've gotten caught in an undertow, it grabs you and it throws you around, and it doesn't matter how strong you are, you're not able to do anything, because in that moment you are in a state of disorientation. And the water is going to do whatever the water wants to do with you until it's done doing it with you. Oof. And you just need to ride that wave. Like literally you need to ride the undertow being thrown all over the place. Well, what he said is when the waves get that big, the undertow is so strong that people misunderstand. They think that this 40-foot undertow is the same as like a 10-foot undertow. I've done undertows before and I can just, you know, power my way through them. And what he said is that there are a lot of surfers who are fantastic athletes. They're master swimmers, but they die because they misinterpret what's happening. And when they get disoriented, they see a light and they think that's up. And they're so disoriented that they don't actually know. They don't have the capacity in that moment to know what's up, what direction is the surface of the water. So they will, in survival mode and in desperation mode, start swimming towards something. And a lot of times they're actually swimming down deeper, or they're swimming horizontally. They're not going to the surface of the water. Or I think he said this is more prevalent. They see the surface of the water, they start expelling their oxygen, and right before they hit the surface of the water, they don't recognize, they don't understand, these undertows are different. There will be a pull back. So they get ready to breach the surface of the water, and then they get pulled back down, and now their body has no oxygen in it. And when the body now has no oxygen in it, now they're in a survival mode that actually uses oxygen faster, shuts muscles down faster. So they put themselves into a mode because they're disoriented. These are masterful swimmers. These are high-level athletes. Because of disorientation, they literally drown when they could otherwise swim, because they're in this state that causes them to do things that's actually the wrong thing to do. And in, you know, coaching, thankfully, this isn't like a life or death situation in terms of you literally dying, but it could be the death of your business, or it could be you never getting oxygen into your business of what you need. But the same idea of disorientation and reorientation is really critical to understand. Now, I want to make a distinction. It's something that Michelle was talking about in terms of being a chaser or a creator. Those are identities, but you also have to understand that creator is your true identity. Entrepreneur is your true identity. We are programmed as an employee, and then we're programmed to chase. So you are not actually a chaser. You are a creator who's been programmed to chase.
Ooh.
You are not actually an employee. And I'm talking about an identity level, not whether you have a job or not. You are an entrepreneur who's been programmed as an employee. You've been programmed as an employee by machines that need employees to do the work for them. And if somebody wants to be an employee, there's no judgment whatsoever. That one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that the entrepreneurial game is not for everybody, but it's literally not for anybody that doesn't re-associate into the identity of, but then also the programming of entrepreneurship. If you don't reassociate into that, you're going to take a gulp of air where there isn't any, or you're going to get ready for the success, and then the entrepreneurial undertow is going to pull you right back down, and you'll constantly be in this state of disorientation. So part of what we all need to do, and by the way, even if you've been in coaching for a while, but you want to go to another level that you've not been at, the same process applies. It doesn't matter if you've been like, I mean, my company's made literally millions and millions and millions of dollars, but going to another level, I still have to go through the same process.
Right.
Because going from one level to another is a beginner's journey. I'm beginning this new level, and there's a new undertow to take, and there are new muscles that I haven't built yet.
Yep.
So this is not like a one-time thing and you just check a box and now you're done with it.
Right.
Every time you fundamentally grow to another level, you're a beginner again. And you need to learn orientation again. This is really critical because one of the things that shuts us down is our own judgment of ourselves. We don't like feeling like a loser. We don't like feeling like a failure.
Especially after succeeding.
Especially if we've succeeded before. It feels like a huge step backwards. It feels like we're going in reverse. And actually, we're not. We're going to the next level. But one of the first things we need to experience at the next level is quote unquote failing, because the experiments that worked on this level are not going to work on that level. But if we take failing and turn it into failure, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
The interpretation, the personal interpretation and the personal attachment to failure, meaning failure equals I am a failure. You guys, that knocks you out of the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
Until you can break that detachment, you're going to die on the moon. And I'm saying that with advocacy, not to, not to burst anybody's bubble, because what we care about is you succeeding on the moon. We care about you succeeding as an entrepreneur. And it doesn't matter how much you want it. It matters whether you have the lung capacity. It matters whether you have the muscles. It matters whether you have the identity. It doesn't matter that you have the affirmations. Do you have the acclamations? Can you be in the world of entrepreneurship, and can you navigate? Because if you can't, but you're motivated, you'll die while motivated. This is about understanding. This is about acclimating. This is about having the foundational stability to succeed in the arena that you want to go into. That's where all of this is coming from. Now, we also fully understand that it's really difficult to comprehend the arena that you've never been in.
Right.
And by difficult, I mean impossible.
Right.
So we teach this stuff not so that you necessarily comprehend all of the things that we're saying from an experiential standpoint, because you can't. You can't comprehend an experience at the experiential level that you haven't had. But we just want you to comprehend the process, that the process is potentially disorienting. The process is about continuing to develop. The process is about detaching from your personal relationship to failure as a failure. There are processes that you can comprehend. This process exists, but you might not be able to experientially comprehend having gone through it yet because you haven't gone through it. So that's kind of this, I don't know the best word. It's not necessarily a catch-22, but like this area where you need to understand what you know you can't understand.
Yep.
But you need to understand that you don't understand it, but understand that it's a non-understandable process, but understand that there is a non-understandable process for now and move toward it.
I think it's about acceptance over resistance. Yeah, like accepting that. Like that it's just, one of the things that we've been saying is the truth, and it doesn't matter what you think about it. And that's how I feel about what you just said, right? So we have the choice to resist it and keep going on in the circle and being disoriented, or just accept that this is a situation.
The truth is the truth, no matter what you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no oxygen on the moon.
Mm-mm.
Doesn't matter how much you want there to be.
Right.
It doesn't matter how comfortable you are breathing oxygen. It doesn't exist on the moon.
Yeah.
The rules of reacting don't exist in entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
There's responding, there's accepting and adapting,
Mm-hmm.
there's assessing,
Adjusting,
but there's not judging,
right?
right? So there are a lot of these distinctions.
Mm-hmm.
I want to create a list of who knows how many there's going to be. Let's say there's 15 distinctions.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, there's a toggle button.
Mm.
And the toggle button is either one way or the other. And it's like you have a toggle button between judging and assessing. And if your toggle button is on judging, you can't be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But if you move the toggle button to assessing, all right, you got a chance. At least one of your toggle buttons is in the right place, right? And I'm seeing it as a green when it's aligned with entrepreneurship, and as a red when it's not. So all of the programming that we're talking about has us toggled on the red side of the list. And we need to change the programming and therefore change our toggle buttons. That's just fun to say too.
Toggle buttons.
Right. Toggle buttons, and we got to get untoggled, right? It's not about getting untangled. It's about getting untoggled. We got to toggle you over here.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's take a look at in these, let's call them 15 metrics. It might end up being 7. It might end up, being a lot more. I don't know. But in these 15 metrics, are you toggled for entrepreneurship? And here's the vision that I'm getting right now. eSchool is all about toggling you for entrepreneurship. And that comes from understanding, not just knowledging, not just knowing, and not just wishing, and not just wanting. So that's what eSchool is at a high level. There's a little banner going on the screen here. You can go to coachshansmith.com/eSchool 2022 to check it out. It's got all the information on it. We're closing enrollment tomorrow, actually. Today is Saturday, April 2nd. We're closing enrollment on Sunday, April 3rd. So if you're watching the replay, check the date. And the reason we're doing that is because we're about to start the 6th call of a year-long program. So we've already done about 10% of the program, and we just have chosen this is the cutoff date that we want you to be in. We don't want you to join and have like 20 videos that you've missed.
Right.
And then try to catch up while at the same time engaging going forward, right? So we're at that point where you still have time to catch up. We're doing a content call and an implementation call back to back, meaning like 1 week is content, 1 week is implementation Q&A. So the way that we've structured the call gives you some room to breathe. It gives you some time to catch up. You don't have to immediately watch all of the archives to then join our call on Monday, April 4th. But if you are interested in this, you've got to join before we start this other call. We're cutting it off Sunday night, Pacific time. So the good news is Pacific time, and the majority of our clients are ahead of us on the clock. So it's actually going to be April 4th, your time, for most of you at some point. So that's eSchool. Now we've already talked about, because we can't not talk about, these 5 tips. We've already alluded to maybe all of them. But we're gonna framework these 5 tips for you for success in a post-pandemic world. And the reason it's really important for you to understand this is because the people that you want to help have been programmed or disoriented in the pandemic world. Our society has never experienced what we did experience and still are experiencing.
Right.
Never. We've had pandemics before, of course. We've had social unrest before, of course. We've had conflict before. Yes, we've had all of those things before. But our society is also exponentially growing. So we've never been this packed into Earth, society, our world. We've never had a pandemic that is literally killing people. We've never not known who to trust and who to listen to. And we've never done all of that stuff in the world of hyper social media movement, where somebody can have a thought, put it on a platform, and somebody across the globe 3 seconds later can get this thought.
That's right.
So talk about disorientation. We've never experienced as a society what we've experienced inside of this hyper disorientation of what we're experiencing. And by the way, it is survival, meaning this thing, regardless of what you think about it or not, is killing people and has killed people. So you take the disorientation that we've been talking about, the disruption, the pulling away from a lot of things that we got comfortable with. A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people lost their normal attachments to a workplace. A lot of people lost family members. A lot of people lost a sense of self. A lot of people were trapped in a place that wasn't safe for them emotionally or physically. The amount of disruption is something that our human species has never seen before. Not like this. Not this kind of undertow. So it would be ridiculous of us to think that we're going to go back to the way it was 2 years ago. This is about re-foundationing. This is about re-normalizing, but not normalizing according to what used to be normal. This is about re-finding a new idea of normal. For people that are determined to go back to the way the world was 2 years ago, you guys, that bus will never come. You will die at that bus stop. That bus will never come because the bus has been destroyed. Life as it was, the way it was, is not returning. The good news, though, is we have an opportunity to re-normalize. We have an opportunity to re-foundationalize. This doesn't mean that any of the fundamentals of human life has changed. Those can't. The foundations of human life, the laws of human life, those are all unchangeable. But the norms, the systems, what we're familiar with, our attachments, the definitions, the way information is disseminated, the way humans are learning, all of that is what's changing. So this is actually a huge opportunity to burrow in a little bit. You can't see my butt burrow move, but if you could, it would be impressive. You might be right. Thank goodness. Right. So this is about rooting yourself. This is about finding stability in foundation rather than dealing with the instability at the surface of the water. And you know what? When there's an earthquake underwater, that's how tsunamis are created. Because when there's an earthquake underwater, because water is so malleable, you know, if you've ever seen somebody do a cannonball into a swimming pool, the water like is disrupted for a while and it's going to slam up against the sides of the pool and then come back. And like a big disruption in the water causes the water to rise and fall, which is what causes big, gigantic waves. If we're on the surface of the water, those waves are throwing us way up in the air and dropping us way down. Our sense of stability is so different.
That's right.
When we're above the water or at the surface of the water being thrown up and down versus just burrowing down and going underwater. The water is still going to move us, but not to the same degree. So we actually have a gigantic opportunity here for ourselves to refoundationalize ourselves individually as humans, to reorient ourselves. What's our new relationship to money? What's our new relationship to success? What's our new relationship to stability? What's our new relationship to safety? What's our new relationship to our emotions? What's our new relationship to this world in 2022? The entrepreneurial journey is about reestablishing new relationships constantly, so much so that the reorientation becomes normal. You can actually find a sense of stability in the reorientation if you are in the process of reorientation correctly, in an aligned way. But if while the world is reorienting, while the world is restabilizing, if we're trying to find control, if we're trying to find security and stability into or from literally a piece of concrete that no longer exists because the earthquake destroyed it, we're stuck and we're in trouble. But going back to something that Michelle said that's really important, when you can find your stability in yourself as the identity of a creator, the identity of an entrepreneur, when you bring your stability, listen to how powerful this is. When you bring your stability, you don't need it from somebody else. It's like somebody says, oh, look it, you've joined the world of entrepreneurship here. You've got to stand on this solid ground right here. And you're like, nah, that's cool. I brought my own solid ground. Now, I might put it on top of that. That's fine. But I brought my own solid ground. I brought my own internal sense of stability inside of your external sense of disruption. But I'm good because I bring my stability. I bring my control. That's one of the ways we find stability, by the way, and control. One of the reasons we find safety in standing on top of concrete is because we believe the concrete is not going to break and suck us into the world, into the planet.
Right.
Because we believe the concrete won't break, we trust the stability of it, and we have a sense of control. If that concrete starts to break, we lose our sense of control. The human is constantly seeking control. But the variables that are controllable as an employee, the variables that are controllable as a chaser, the variables that we seek our trust in because we can control it, are just simply not available as an entrepreneur. That's just one of those toggle buttons. Where's your control? Where does control come from? Does control come from another person's perspective? Does control come from another person's set of instructions? I mean, think about it. How can you follow new instructions, or how can you follow established instructions in a new territory? How can you do that? How can you step into a new room and follow the instructions that were built in a different room? It just doesn't work that way. So this is not about following instructions. And so one of the toggle buttons is, how do you seek control? And where do you find control? If control is coming internally from you, intrinsically, you got a chance. If control is always needed externally, you don't have a chance as an entrepreneur.
No.
It might be a part of the process where you're learning clues and you're following and so forth. So we're not saying that you automatically just need to jump off the cliff with no parachute.
Right.
But you've got to learn like a leader. You have to understand, I got to go through things so I can develop my own sense of control. Rather than always be dependent on somebody else's control. I mean, think about this. How can you find your control from somebody else and create independence?
You can't.
I mean, it's a toggle button. What do you want to add to that, if anything?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Coach Felipe just put in chat, I felt that deep sigh. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole game. Like I think it's less about what you're doing and what we're doing. It's more about why, right? So if I know that I'm on the journey, that this is part of my journey, I'm going through this process because there's like, I'm in it for the long game. And this is part of the journey, right? This having this mindset and like what to think. And I'm aware like, okay, I'm in this place right now where I'm learning what to think, not how to think, but I know there's more than this. One of the things that was a huge realization for me not that long ago is that I think a lot of us, it feels really good to say we want to be a leader. But one of the realizations that I had is I actually didn't for a lot of years because I really enjoyed being a really good student. And if we're super committed to looking good instead of being good, then we're not going to want to evolve to that next level, right? That you were talking about earlier. We're not going to want to scale up because wherever it is that we're at, we feel really safe here and we feel really seen here. So a lot of us that have really mastered being an employee, and I was a very good employee. Like I can be like a very, very good employee, super hardworking. Number one, I'll win awards if you're handing them out, right? And I liked that. Like I did. And I didn't recognize though that was actually something that I could self-source. I didn't recognize that was something that I could give myself as I developed these skills as a leader and I elevated myself to the next level. I didn't realize that I could bring that with me when I brought the foundation. And so I thought, because I was in that more like mindset of binary either or, that if I gave up this, then I would also have to give up everything that came with it. And that was a huge shift for me of recognizing like, oh, this leadership game, this is a different conversation. And I can't lead others if I'm not leading self. And I've got to be able to start with me and really do this self-sourcing of the land, of the affirmation, of the entire, right, the queendom, right? And then I can build, because if I'm dependent on other people, then there's no way. Like I'm not a leader. I am a follower in that position. And followers don't build entrepreneurial businesses.
Man. Hopefully this is landing with love and advocacy. Mm-hmm. You know, even that statement, followers don't build entrepreneurial businesses. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Following could be, and for most of us, it is a phase of the learning.
Right.
But you're only going to learn what you need to learn while you're following in order to start leading if you are following as a leader.
Right.
If you are learning as a leader, then you can learn what you need to learn in your following phase.
Correct.
But you won't if you're not learning as a leader, learning right. as an entrepreneur with the long-term vision. And here's the other thing that I really want you to understand, you guys. When you have long-term commitment, your short-term results will be better. This is not like I'm telling you, or we're telling you that you need to just settle on all your goals. And you need to trade in the goals of getting coaching clients, making money, having success, because we're telling you, you got to be in it for the long haul. When you learn as though you're in it for the long haul, you build differently. Your energy is different. You're more attractive to people. And you actually have much better chances at short-term success when you're committed to long-term mastery. When you're committed to short-term success, you will never achieve long-term mastery. If you want to be a leader, you must be committed to long-term mastery. So hopefully we're putting together some toggles for you. It's either this or that. And what this world is calling for is leaders. The world is calling for leaders who understand human disorientation. Leaders who understand human fear, who understand human behavior. Just taking 2020 rules and applying them to 2022 humans, I mean, it is one of the most disrespectful things you could do.
They don't exist anymore.
They don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So Michelle used a word a little while ago. That's a really important word. It's about evolution, evolving. We've got to evolve. That's a different game than just revolve. It's really what chasing, learning, learning like a follower, that's just going to lead to your revolution. You're just going to keep spinning yourself in circles.
Yeah.
When you're committed to learning like a leader, you'll still go in circles, but you'll evolve while you're going in circles. You'll continue to grow rather than just staying on that first level, just going, how come I'm not going any higher? Probably because you're not learning like a leader. So let's framework some of these concepts into these 5 tips. We may have taught all of them already. I don't know. We'll just represent it. But the first one is that and just to represent the positioning of these are 5 tips that we have for you to succeed as a coach post-pandemic, specifically to succeed as a coach in the industry of coaching with the humans who have been disoriented and disrupted by the pandemic. Yeah. That's what we're talking about here specifically. People need trust. So you've got to create trust. The way to create trust is by being real, by being transparent. You don't create trust by trying to impress people. Not anymore. Once upon a time, yeah, not now. You need to be real. You need to be transparent. Yeah. We'll post a specific video on this called How to Sell Truth and Transformation in an Attention and Information Economy. So we dive much deeper on this topic in that video. So if you want more, then go ahead and check out that video. But you got to understand that in the experience of disruption, especially in the social media era and the online marketing era, where so many people have fallen for something that they believed and it turned out to not be true. Yeah. It turned out to not match their expectations. Right. We distrust online, especially, more than we ever did. I think most people are in a state of default distrust, yeah, which is not how it used to be. Right. But because of specifically our online experience, we distrust online, yeah, more than we ever did. So now if people are on a default state of distrust, you got to meet them there. Right. 15 years ago, people didn't have a default distrust of the online community necessarily. Not everybody, like I think almost everybody does nowadays. Sure. It wasn't like that because we didn't have all of the experience to give us the distrust. Right. But now we got to understand we're dealing with humans who distrust information, distrust marketers, distrust putting their credit card in online terminals, distrust all kinds of things, if not everything. Including themselves. And themselves. They distrust their own ability to know what's aligned and what's not aligned. I'm glad you added that. Yeah. So they distrust the process and they distrust the person. They distrust you as a person and they distrust themselves as the person. Mm-hmm. Now, the level of distrust is a sliding scale. So some of you might distrust just a little bit, and you might not be resonating with this at a deep level. And some of you might completely distrust everyone and everything. Right. But whether you distrust or not, you got to understand the people that you're wanting to help, like the people that want to change their lives. What do you think is more likely to be true? they're in a state of disruption and distrust, or they're in a state of total trust and their life is working, and yet at the same time, they want somebody to help them fix it.
Yeah. Number one.
Right. So just by the fact that we're vulnerably looking for help means we don't trust ourselves to be able to make the change.
Right.
And therefore, we need trust in somebody else as a leader. And you can create trust as a leader by being a transparent human faster than by sharing any information.
Bingo.
Your information can be phenomenal. That doesn't mean they'll trust you as a human. That doesn't mean they'll trust you as a leader.
Yeah.
So be transparent. And part of being transparent, which is natural, but this is also something that you have to put a little effort into, is to be distinct. You've got to be willing to be who you actually are, who you naturally are. One of the things that I learned many years ago in an acting context, but is really powerful in any kind of leadership context, is if you can't hide it, shine a light on it.
Yes.
What most of us are trying to do is hide the things that we're insecure about. And what you got to understand is a lot of the things that you're insecure about are the very things that people will follow you for. They're the very reasons that people might fall in love with you. You might think that if they knew this about me, they wouldn't like me. In reality, when they get to know that about you, they'll probably love you. Why? Because they can relate to that. Nobody can see themselves in perfection because nobody really sees themselves as perfect.
Right.
But we can see ourselves in imperfection. We can see ourselves in humanity. We can see ourselves in the mistakes. We can see ourselves in the stuff that we think we need to hide behind. People can actually see themselves inside of that. And that will create trust. And then your information might matter to them.
Right.
Then your invitation might matter to them. But if they don't trust you, and they don't trust the process, and they don't trust your leadership, even if it's just like, hey, I'm going to give you a downloadable PDF if you give me your email address. There's trust in that. Might not need to be a huge level of trust, like doing a trust fall from 10 feet off the ground. But there's still trust in that. And if they're coming to us with the default state of distrust, then we need to bring the trust. And we need to bring an over saturated amount of trust to the process in order to overcome that piece. Now, if you have an embodied fear of being seen, an embodied fear of being exposed, that must change.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter if I teach you how to be successful as a leader, as an entrepreneur, because what your body hears is, uh-oh, that means these lights have to go on. That means people are going to see me. I've been trying to make sure people don't see me for all this time. So please don't push me into the spotlight.
Right.
If you have embodied fears of visibility, you have to heal those. Don't overcompensate for them. Heal them.
Yeah.
The great news is nobody was born afraid of the spotlight.
No.
Nobody was born afraid of being seen. Nobody was born afraid of dancing or afraid of singing, literally or metaphorically. Nobody was born afraid of going after what they want in life, whether it's the packet of cookies on aisle 9, or it's that thing that you pick up off the ground and see how it tastes, or it's your dreams. Nobody was born afraid of what most of us are afraid of as adults.
Right.
And the good news is anything that was learned can be unlearned.
Yes.
That's the systems work. What do you want to add before we go to number 2?
Two things. One, when you said the information, right, it's not phenomenal. The word that came to mind for me is, yeah, it's not phenomenal. It's findable. All information is findable. Information isn't unique. If there's something you want to know, you can Google it and get an answer to it. And so any of the information that you provide, even if you think it's so unique, I just want to tell you, just being honest, because I love you, it's not. It's findable by somebody. And so you have to lead to what Sean was saying. You have to lead with who you are, because your perspective on the information, your way of delivering the information, that's the thing that's valuable. And I'll tell you, I have friends right now who've been sending me DMs who are saying stuff that if the average person sent me a message and said, hey, send me this and I'll give you this, I would ignore it or just tell them no, thank you, because I don't trust. But there are people that I know and I trust, right? That if you, Sean, were like, hey, pay me $250 and I'll give you this thing, I trust you. So I would listen. Even if the same words were said by somebody else that I don't know, I would be like, scam alert, right? But from you, because I trust you, then I listen. And I just share that because I want all of us to really understand how important we are as the person. And then the second thing is, we talked about transparency. And I just want to say this really clearly. That doesn't mean your bad stuff. And I say bad because I don't believe that, but like the stuff that you're like your deepest shame, air all of that out. Transparent just means honest. Transparent means authentic. Transparent means that you're just who you are without cover. Right? That you're not showing up with any masks on. So that can be in your joy, that can be in your irritation, that can be in your humor, your personality. So it's not about just like being like transparent isn't a thing. It's the removal of the things that are blocking people from seeing who you are.
Yeah. Amen to that. And there's a comment that I think is really powerful. Sherry said, life experiences are to be turned into 12 books about the life experiences. I've lived in flux for years. Now it's time to flex. I love that. And it's really about flexing muscles. I'm checking my Venmo account. You said
you had $250?
Yeah, you just said that. It's captured on video because you trust me that if I tell you to pay me $250.
All right, you should have it.
Let's see. No, I still.
Really? Probably a Venmo thing.
The rest of this video is being done in protest. Because now I no longer trust you. All right. Number 2. As far as the 5 tips. Remember, we teach for understanding, you guys. The tips don't mean anything. It's like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
The tip of the iceberg is literally useless without what's underneath it.
Right.
And if all you did was take the tip of the iceberg, let's call it 10%. If all you did was take the tip of the iceberg that you see and go, oh, okay, they taught me the 5 things to do. And then you take the tip of the iceberg without understanding all of the stuff underneath it. And you take that 10% of the iceberg and you put it in your area of the water. Guess what happens? 90% of it goes underwater. So if you just take the knowledge of the 10% above the water, 90% of it is not implementable unless you have the understanding of what's underwater. Right. We should do a video on that, like with the actual visual. Because if you take the 10% of the iceberg and then you put it in the water, 90% of it goes down. Now you've got 10% of the 10% that you were following, and then somebody else follows you and they take 10% of your 10% of the 10%. And then now it's 1% of the original thing. And that's what continues to duplicate out. And people are not like, nobody has below the water understanding. Yeah. So without the understanding, the implementation of the rules are just not really going to matter, which is why actually the rules can be taught quicker, like, and I'm putting rules in quotations. What to do can be taught quicker if you understand how to think, because then you're just going to do the thing because it's coming from a place of understanding. Anyway, number 2 is connection. When you create trust, through transparency, connection is going to be a byproduct of that. But you have to understand that creating connection is different than just getting a fan on your business page, than just getting a subscriber, than just getting a follower, the way that social media has defined followers. And by the way, social media has also defined creators as people who have a lot of following on social media. That's not the creation that we're talking about. That's not the creation that creates trust. And a lot of people have 1 million followers on social media, and they actually have very few customers because the business requires trust, and it requires conversion, and it requires connection. So if you understand that as a teacher, you need to facilitate connection between them and you, between you and them, and between them and them. And all of that starts with you and you. You've got to come from a place of connection in order to teach from the place of connection and create connection between you and who's listening, but ideally between them and them. You want to give people an experience of themselves through your teaching, through your stories, through your transparency. You want to give people an experience of themselves if you want to change people's lives. But understand, there are two, this is one of those toggles. We already talked about it, I think. You're either reacting or you're creating. There are two kinds of behavioral modes, reaction and creation. If you are in reaction mode, you cannot create connection. You just can't do it because you're following directions. You're not coming from a place of creation. You're not coming from a place of connection. So how can you create that in anybody else? Because it's not happening in you first.
Yes.
So you've got to be in this place of creation in order to do what it is that we're saying that you've got to do. And creation is something that we need to unlock. Our natural creativity has been stifled.
Yes.
There's not a single one of you listening to these words who doesn't know how to create. But almost all of you and almost all of us, I'll put myself in that category still, even though my creativity was really unlocked about 4 years ago. Michelle's creativity has been unlocked, but both of us were creatively constipated for a long time as well. Yeah. Most people are creatively constipated because of programming, not because of deficiency, not because you don't have the ability to create. It's because the permission to create was programmed out of you. And it was probably programmed out of you through punishment. That's great news. Because if it was programmed out of you, the programming can be unlearned, and then you can get back to that place of natural entrepreneurial creativity. But that takes a process. You can't live under the covers of restriction for 30 years and then all of a sudden hit that toggle button and go, oh, okay, now I'm free to create. Because you have so many patterns. You have thought patterns, you have emotional patterns, you have embodied patterns. You have sabotage patterns. There's all kinds of things that have been built upon and are attached to the suppressive programming. The great news is that can all be undone, and it won't take as long as it took to create the programming of protection. It won't take that long, but it also won't be the flip of a switch either. If you expect it to be, then you'll never get there. Because you're expecting a destination instead of signing up for the journey of evolution. And one piece of creativity that's really important to understand, first of all, we don't conceptually understand creativity with our intellect, because the intellect is not creative. The intellect is actually afraid of creativity. So if we try to understand creativity according to our intellect and we try to operate intellectually and expect our creativity to evolve, it's not going to happen. Right. Because they're two different animals. Like literally they're two different animals. So you have to understand what creativity is to a degree. And one of the pieces that's really critical. This is one of the mind-blowing variables that was important for me to get, and is important. Like we get a lot of reaction to this from people learning this for the first time, but then going through it, once we help pace them through it, is that creativity requires tension, conflict, irritation, and ignorance. It requires all of that. Think about what creativity is. Creativity, the way we're talking about, is creating something that doesn't exist. How is it possible to create something that doesn't exist while committed to knowledge from the past? How can we operate on instructions from the past and create something that doesn't exist? So you got to understand, creativity starts with, I don't know. Creativity starts at the line of ignorance. Most of us have been programmed to fear, I don't know. Because if I don't know, then I can't prepare. The reason we crave knowledge in this capacity is because we want to prepare for danger.
Right.
We want to know where the rules are, where the boundaries are, so that we cannot mess up. So we crave knowledge for that reason. Knowledge and creativity of something new cannot go together. You can have knowledge of the process and then know, oh, at this point where I don't know what it looks like, that's where creating a new thing starts. That's why this is a toggle button. Because you cannot go beyond the line of knowledge and create something new. It's impossible. And all of us want to create something new for our lives. So ignorance is a required ingredient for creativity. But ignorance is what the employee fears. Ignorance is what the chaser fears. That's why we've got to change our relationship to creativity and our relationship to ignorance. And then understand that creativity is born out of.
That's right.
Tension, conflict, irritation, and ignorance. And creativity requires those four ingredients in the creation of the new thing. And all of that is exciting once we change our relationship to it.
Yes.
But we're never going to be able to change the required recipe for creativity. We'll just change our relationship to it because we understand it better.
Bingo.
Anything to add?
And just that it's about welcoming, right? Like one of the things that I've said is that I used to ask other people this, and what I recognized inside of this conversation is that I had to create a seat at my own table for my ignorance. I had to welcome it. I had to allow it to be safe with me because I was so afraid of it not being safe with other people and them judging me as looking bad and then me getting punished or ostracized, abandoned, etc., that I avoided all of the things that creativity requires, right? So once I started to open up space for my ignorance inside of me internally, then that gave me the permission that you were speaking to.
Yeah, that's huge. It's just knowing it won't make it comfortable.
No.
I don't think I've ever learned how to be comfortable inside of ignorance, but I've learned how to value the process.
Sure.
Of creating inside of ignorance and out of ignorance and into ignorance. And ignorance doesn't mean stupidity. Although at some point in time, most of us were programmed that it does. If you don't know something, then you're stupid. That's why we're afraid to answer questions if we don't really know the answer.
Right.
Because what if we get exposed as being ignorant and then we get laughed at again?
Right.
So most of us have a neurological programmed fear of ignorance based on our childhood learning.
Sure.
And yet we're stepping into an entrepreneurial endeavor that requires it.
That's right.
That's why we say you're going to die on the moon.
Yeah.
If you don't change your relationship to ignorance and creativity and tension and understand the whole process, you're going to die on the moon. So we want to help you get the body and build the muscles for the journey that you want. The third tip here, and this is, well, it depends on who you're listening to, but this is probably going to go against what many of you are listening to or many of you are hearing, because it's what I'm hearing pretty much all over the place. What we're hearing is how to operate online, because the world has basically been thrown into like online learning only for a long period of time. So we as business owners, as leaders, we had to adapt online.
Yeah.
My advice to you is to get offline again. Get offline where it's easier to actually create connection.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things to get online is attention. The majority of the competition online is for people's attention.
Yeah.
I heard just the other day that most of us are bombarded by over 4,000 marketing messages every single day. 4,000. So one of our default states is not paying attention.
Yeah.
We go online with a default state of ignoring all of these messages because we're bombarded, and we wouldn't be able to function if we paid attention to all the messages that are trying to get our attention.
Oh my gosh.
So the humans have been assaulted for years now, but really over the last couple years. And not only have we been assaulted online, but we've spent more time online. So now the competition has gotten greater and our learning online has gotten greater. And those two things have collided for this massive, like, shark fight for people's attention. And it's just hard. It's hard for us to be online, be on Zoom, be on something like this and not see notifications come up and not in the background and outside of the view of the camera, or have our camera off and not be doing all kinds of these other things. You cannot, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. I'm going to create something. This is exciting.
Banana.
It's not banana.
Oh.
You cannot multitask mastery.
Woo!
So again, if you're learning like a leader, you won't be learning while reacting, while chasing, while paying attention to something else, and expect mastery. Because you'll never multitask mastery. Have you ever seen anybody become a virtuoso in 3 instruments at the same time? Somebody's playing the piano while with their elbow playing the guitar, and at the same time, pushing air out of a harmonica and trying to learn all of them at the same time. It's impossible. You can't ride 3 horses at the same time. You cannot get good at something that requires mastery, at something that requires implementation, at something that requires attention, at something that requires focus while being distracted. You just can't do that. So if we want to provide implementation for our people, we need to get their attention. And one of the best ways to get their attention is get offline again. Go where the people are. That might mean go to networking events again. It might mean calling up some of the local organizations and seeing if they're doing live events. It might mean calling up businesses, searching now. I just did a training a week and a half ago, in-person training again for a network marketing company.
Right.
They're all coming back now, in that industry especially. And a lot of industries are all coming back to in-person events. A lot of people don't have the body for in-person events anymore, or they never built it because they've just done everything online.
Right.
And there are a lot of people who are established online and won't choose to go back offline. They've just left a seat open for you.
That's right.
To fill this place of value that a lot of people have now. A lot of people are craving the human connection that they feel like they haven't had in a long, long time. Leaders will be able to find, recognize, and fill those opportunities. Followers won't. Chasers won't. If you've been following the instructions for the last 2 years of how to build an online business, you won't see the opportunities offline. Now, that does not mean don't be online. That doesn't mean that I'm saying there's nothing for you online. What I'm saying is there is a massive opportunity offline in the very near future for the people that understand it, that can see it, that can create opportunities, and that can fulfill. For some of you, that might be in addition to online. But for some of you, it might be replacement for online.
Yeah.
Depends on you. Depends on who you are. But please be open and be searching for the offline opportunities.
Yes.
Anything you want to add to that before going to number 4?
Yeah, just be a human and be willing to have actual conversations with other actual human beings, right? This is about being in relationship with other people. And that's not impossible, but it's harder to do without those more intimate connections. And I'm going to keep going back to this because this is just what I know to be my personal truth. If you don't have that kind of closeness and relationship within yourself, then this is going to be something that you fear. So if that is where you're at and you are noticing that you're resisting that, then again, you have to do the work, the systems work that's going to help you remove those blocks so that you can do this, because this is what's required, especially when you have people who are skeptical of whether or not you're even an actual human on the other side of the computer. And you can avoid that, right, by being in their face with them, connecting kind of that belly to belly energy.
Yeah. Ramona just made a comment about being scattered, a scattered mind. And if we, as the teacher, are showing up with the scattered mind, we're showing up to our sales calls with a scattered mind, we're writing emails with a scattered mind, we're making posts with a scattered mind.
Yeah.
Everything is coming from that energy of distraction. That's really difficult to invite people into stability when your magnet is unstable, when your magnet is distracted. It's like, hey, focus on me, even though I'm not focused.
Right.
So much of this, as you said a while ago, is self-leadership. It's about understanding who you are so that your magnet can provide what people are actually attracted to. And distraction is not one of them. Number 4, quality over quantity. Oh, I don't know that I completely finished this thought. Offline is easier to have people's attention. This training that I just did, I had an hour in person, and there might have been a few people checking their phones here and there, but for the most part, because I could see their eyes.
That's right.
And they know I can see their eyes.
Right.
And they want to see my eyes, and they're looking at body language, and there's so much communication that's happening that very few people were not focused on what was happening in the room. Now, the more compelling your messages and the more interesting and the more intriguing your messages are, the more it's going to get their attention. So it starts to work on itself. But if that training was online, it's almost impossible that the majority of the people wouldn't have been checking phones and writing emails and, checking posts and all that stuff behind the scenes.
Sure.
So offline is a better way to command attention.
Yeah.
Even if it's less people, and it will be less people usually, which leads into number 4, quality over quantity. Quality over quantity. I would rather have, I think in the room was about 40 people. I would rather have 40 people paying attention than 4,000 distracted followers.
That's right.
And out of those 40 people paying attention, what if 10% of them actually implement? And what if you can change 4 people's lives fundamentally out of 40 people that are paying attention? The chances out of 4,000 distracted followers that anybody is going to implement is actually less than the idea that 4 out of 40 will implement. That's the difference between quality and quantity and depth versus breadth, right? Like trying to build broad, trying to build shallow but wide versus narrow and deep. Quality is going to give you more fulfillment, and it's actually going to give you more results. It's going to give your business more money. Everything you're wanting is easier to create and experience with depth.
Yeah.
And when you have all these things that we're talking about, you're going to give your clients and your prospects a deeper experience and a more valuable experience of themselves for themselves. Way too many people are focused on the horizontal numbers instead of the vertical ones.
That's right. Oof.
All right, let me dive into that just a little bit. Let's go vertical with that one.
Yeah.
People want the horizontal numbers. How many people across all your social media platforms do you have?
That's right.
How many people on an email list do you have? How many followers, right? Look at all these people in a broad horizontal way. It's like taking a bunch of seeds and just spreading them and like throwing them out as wide as you can versus getting a shovel and actually diving deep.
Yeah.
Your fulfillment, your joy, your happiness, your money, your profitability, your success of your business will be in the vertical numbers. How deep can you go with people, with content, with experiences? You take people vertically, downward, vertically, deep. You will have a much more successful and stable business than if what you're focused on is horizontal. All the horizontal stuff, those are vanity metrics.
Yep.
And vanity metrics doesn't really mean
shit.
anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Such a swear.
Yeah. I remember when I used to be at my direct sales company, I would tell people.
I still don't have a Venmo notification either, but go ahead, continue.
Well, I'm focused here. So it'll be after this video. Or you could just put it on my tab. I know you got
now you know me enough to know that I just hovered over the end broadcast button when you said I'm gonna get my $250 after the video.
Right.
Bye.
I'm surprised, Michael. I'm surprised he hasn't kicked me out yet.
Only because there's people watching.
One of the things that I would say when I was, training in the direct sales world is I was like, it's almost as if you were to just take 50 business cards and go into a public place, right? Go into your downtown area and throw all the cards in the air and then turn around and go home and say, I handed out 50 business cards today.
You mean people don't like run around and dive for the cards and then immediately call them up?
Right.
Yeah.
And the problem with that, like, it's one thing just to say, hey, these are vanity metrics and I like them. And this goes back to being honest about like what's real, right? Because there's nothing wrong with saying, oh, hey, these are the number of followers that I have. These are the number of people who liked or hearted or whatever my post, but understand that it's vanity. Because where we get twisted is that we come back home and we tell ourselves that, why don't we have any consultation calls? Why don't we have any new clients? Why isn't there any new business coming in? I handed out 50 business cards today, but you didn't make any connection.
You just littered. That's all you did.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. We just littered. The internet littering, right? I've actually been in a conversation with Chris about this. It's just, we're just putting trash out there because we're not actually making connections. We're not having all these tie together, right? We're not making these quality connections and these quality relationships. And so then we're actually not doing work, but we're telling ourselves, what are you thinking about? You're not even here. I can totally tell. I can see you.
Right. Where are we?
Look,
well, I was thinking about littering all over the place, throwing the business cards, or we sling our Facebook posts, or we just throw a bunch of stuff. And that doesn't mean that you can't do those things. Like Facebook posts can absolutely work. Business cards can work if there's connection. So it's not in the actions.
Yes.
It's in the depth of the action. So two people can do two things that look the same.
That's right.
You can do a Facebook story, an Instagram story, a reel. You can do things that on the surface look the same, but one of them has depth underneath it, which changes the effectiveness of it. And the other one doesn't. It's just the floaty on top of the surface of the water. There's nothing actually deep there, and therefore there is no connection. And so that's one of the reasons why it makes it really difficult for us to assess and discern, because a lot of the surface level stuff looks the same.
Right.
But people can tell the difference in the depth of the work. So that's what I was thinking about, is littering all over the place and expecting the results
of connection.
Yeah,
of like the intimate conversations and connections. And that's what you were just speaking about, is why it's so important for us to understand, like have that understanding, and not just chase the rules, or not just look at what we see somebody else doing and try to memorize that and then just regurgitate their behavior. Because if we're lacking the butt burrowing, right, that you were doing earlier, if we're lacking that, it's right. Keep going. There you go. That looks great. So if we're lacking all of those things, then even if we duplicate the actions, then we're not going to get the same results. And then we end up, if we're like most people, we end up beating ourselves up and thinking that we're wrong and we're the problem, when it's actually that we don't have the depth of the understanding.
That triggered the idea of content. We're not going to teach it here just because we're not. It wasn't in the notes. But speaking of content on Facebook, there's 5 different types of entrepreneurial content. So if you were to ask somebody, why did you make that post? Most people wouldn't be able to say why or what the intention is, or that their posts are actually strung together, because tomorrow I'm going to do a different one, because Friday I'm going to make an invitation. Right. And therefore we got to reverse engineer everything that we're doing. Most people don't understand underneath the content. So the reason you did that is because everybody's doing that, or somebody told me to. So therefore I did that thing, I put out a poll or whatever. All of this comes down to, continues to come back to understanding ourselves, understanding the process, understanding the purpose of everything that we do. All right. The last tip here, number 5.
Oh,
Mambo number 5.
Yes.
By the way, I have Venmo open.
You do.
But in my search for Michelle Moore paid you $250. I see a notification that my daughter paid somebody. So naturally I'm like, whoa, so she paid who to what. And of course, anyway, I just got a little distracted.
That's maybe you should focus and learn like a leader.
What?
Exactly. Number 5.
All right. Number 5 is, we've already taught this.
Yeah. This
throughout
is
the whole theme of this now 2-hour
short video
is to rebuild and reestablish and reveal and re-normalize and re-foundationalize the entrepreneurial identity.
Yes.
We put all those words with a re in front of it because we want to remind you that your entrepreneurial identity is already in there. It's just covered up. So we need to reprogram. And really the way that we rebuild the entrepreneurial identity is we de-build the entrepreneurial one. I mean, the employee one. We deprogram all the protection stuff that we've been talking about. And that way we can uncover what's already there.
Yes.
That's extremely critical for us to understand and trust. And then realize that the process of taking layers off and the process of deprogramming, especially when those programs are for our protection and safety, it's just different. It certainly isn't memorization learning. Give me a learning and I'll put it on the test so that you can give me a gold star, teacher. That's not this kind of learning.
Right.
That's not the embodied learning of taking layers off and getting back to your natural state.
Yes.
We were all produced as entrepreneurs, but we were also all programmed as employees. Now, for some of you, maybe you were able to avoid that programming. Most people are not. We were produced as an entrepreneur. So this is about getting back to who you really are. This is about getting back to the identity that you must revive and reignite in order to create freedom.
Yes.
In terms of building a business, being an entrepreneur, and especially doing it as a transformational coach, you cannot do that unless you have the identity of an entrepreneur. So before you create an entrepreneurial entity, you have to reestablish your entrepreneurial identity.
Yeah.
Without the entrepreneurial identity, all the laws of entrepreneurship are just going to roll right off you. They're just going to bounce right off of you.
Yeah.
Because your entrepreneurial identity won't hold on to them.
Yeah.
This is probably the biggest outcome that we've recognized and we're wanting to produce and are producing in eSchool.
That's right.
The entrepreneurial identity, so that you can learn how to think, how to decide, how to assess what's going on around you and make a bold choice. Those are entrepreneurial traits that can only come out of entrepreneurial identities. If you have an employee identity or a chasing identity or a following identity, you're operating by and driven by safety.
Yeah.
You will sabotage everything because it doesn't match, because you are toggled in the wrong place. So many people are trying to get over the sabotage. They're trying to just push themselves into visibility, and they're not treating what created the fear of the visibility.
Yeah.
When at some point in time, you weren't afraid of the visibility. So it's like literally putting on a jacket because at one point in time it was raining or it was cold outside, zipping up the jacket, but then stapling it to your skin, hot gluing it to your body, getting it to the point where it becomes a piece of your essence.
Right.
and then getting frustrated because you don't feel the freedom that can only be felt when the jacket is removed.
Right.
So then we keep overcompensating for the layers that we've put on. The good news is it's not actually hot glued to your skin. It's just programmed there. It's not actually stapled to you. It is something that is removable.
Yes.
So that you can then become movable from a liberated standpoint. But you've got to make the identity shift. This isn't a flip of a switch, but it is possible. And so much of this is about unprogramming, deprogramming, reprogramming, so that we can get back to who we really are.
That's right.
We've made mention of this a few times. I just want to highlight this as we bring this to a close. You cannot create freedom as a chaser.
Right.
You cannot create independence while depending on somebody else's instructions. And only try to find your success inside the restriction of tell me what to do, tell me what to think, and then I'll do it. You give me the instructions, I will build that liberating entrepreneurial entity in business. And it's not possible because you're just in the wrong realm. So we want you to become a creator, one who creates with the intention of and from the influence of transformation, so that you can change people's lives. And this is an essence. This is an identity. This is an energy. If you don't have the essence, identity, and energy of an entrepreneur, you will sabotage all of the laws of entrepreneurship because they just won't work. They won't make sense. They won't be aligned with the way that you are seeing the world. And to add one more piece to this, however you are seeing the world, whatever your dominant identity is, your ego will protect. We have this protective bubble sort of mechanism. In this context, this is what the ego is doing. It's protecting our dominant identity.
Right.
So if you see the world as a chaser, if you see the world as an employee, your ego is operating to protect your employee identity. So now not only are you fighting against the identity, but you're fighting against your own ego, which is way better at protecting than you are.
Yeah.
You'll never overpower your ego.
No.
You can only shift what your ego is protecting. And when you shift what your ego is protecting, now your ego's protection can be aligned with what you want to create. But if you don't shift the entrepreneurial identity, your ego will always protect against what you're trying to create. There's a lot to that. There's a lot of depth to that piece, to that idea. But if we, from a really high level, if we give you what the entrepreneurial journey looks like, this is massively simplified, but just to give you a framework, I believe there are 6 phases to the entrepreneurial journey. And identity is the first one. Without this first phase, the other 5 become nearly impossible because they stack on top of each other. And just to give you what those are, it's identity, implementation, iteration, income, influence, and impact. What most people are doing is just trying to get on those last 3.
That's right.
Give me the income and the influence and the impact because I want to change lives. I just got it really maps onto the iceberg idea.
Yeah.
Identity, implementation, iteration, that's all below surface. That's all below the water. And most people just want to get on top of the surface of the water and just do the income thing. What did you do to make your income? Okay, well, let me do that to make my income with nothing below the surface. You're just going to fall and probably drown underwater because there's no foundation there keeping you above water. Identity, implementation, iteration, income, influence, impact. I don't know, my hand might have gone off the camera there, but that's really what it looks like. Is there is a way to get to that rising of success that we want, but not without the foundation of what it takes. And I read the other day that most overnight successes take 12 years.
Wow.
To get to the point where the results start to shoot up. That doesn't mean there are no results for 12 years. Let me be very clear. While you're learning mastery, you can be succeeding. You can be getting clients. You can be making money. You can be doing a lot of stuff, and you can create success on your road to mastery.
Yeah.
But most people are just trying to get to success by following the directions of somebody else's recipe without doing the internal work. And that's why even if you succeed, it's actually worse. It's actually worse to succeed with no foundation. Because if you don't have foundation that builds the success, that success will fall. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah.
And the fall will break you.
Yeah.
If you don't have the foundation underneath. If you've got the foundation, you can pivot. You won't fall and splat on the ground.
Absolutely.
So
we don't value the foundation. It reminds me of the story we told in e-school of the Chinese bamboo tree. I mean, yeah, we just have to be willing to do the work and trust that we are developing the roots, even if we can't see anything above the surface. But we're so used to, right, from the last conversation about the vanity, right, the horizontal numbers, that we don't have the value in the vertical numbers.
Bingo.
It's a different understanding. One of the images that came to mind for me earlier is, especially inside of this identity conversation, is that it's almost like we have like a tumor, right? Like there's something that's lodged in our body. It's not who we are. It's not our true essence. It's just this thing that's stuck in us. But instead of doing the work to just remove the tumor so that we can go about our lives, we're trying to just change our outfit.
Yep.
And just learn a different strategy, or like, well, let me put this on and see if that doesn't, make that thing go away. And we might look good for a minute, but there's no long-term release because we didn't remove the thing that's actually blocking us from what it really truly is that we desire.
So if you want, everybody, if you want stability and sustainability and viability in business, if you want the control to be able to pivot, if you want that trust in yourself, if you want to bring your own stability with you and not rely on all the external circumstances to be exactly what you need them to be because you don't trust yourself standing on your own 2 feet. If you want to change that and you want all of that foundational freedom, I don't know that I've ever said foundational freedom before. At least it's landing on me different if I've said it before. Foundational freedom. This is the work you have to do. It's not available any other way. If you want to do it with us, awesome. This is the entire intention of eSchool for coaches.
Right.
It's the foundational freedom work. It's all the toggle buttons that we've been talking about. It's the identity work. It's the inside out trust and control and stability and understanding creativity. And the things that people are doing in just a few weeks is phenomenal. The stuff that's coming out, the fears that are no longer holding them down. People are going live on Facebook. People are publishing articles right away. Somebody got 2 paid clients. Just like that's an idea, or that's a confirmation of focused on mastery. And oh, by the way, get some success on the way there.
That's right.
Because there's something much bigger that you're going toward.
Yes.
So if you want to do this work with us, we're leading this process in eSchool for coaches. We're closing the enrollment tomorrow night as of the time we're recording this, which is Saturday, April 2nd, which means Sunday, April 3rd at midnight Pacific time. We're closing the enrollment. It's a year-long program, and we've already done several weeks of calls. So you have plenty of time to catch up with the recordings and then join us. But we're cutting it off because we don't want that time of how long you need to reconsume a lot of the recordings to stack up to where it actually probably doesn't make sense anymore. If you're watching this video after that, or you just decide for whatever reason not to join us in this process, and by the way, a lot of people are saying, you know, I just don't want to join a program, or I've got so many things that I've purchased and I'm not implementing. Right. Because this is the reason.
Right.
You could pay as much money as you want and buy all of the correct information out there. If you don't have the entrepreneurial identity and the entrepreneurial creativity, it doesn't matter what you've purchased. It doesn't matter how golden the information is. It will roll right off your employee identity, protected by your ego, because you won't be able to implement it. So what we're telling people, and some people are going, yeah, that's actually already happening, is that doing this work is going to allow you to implement a lot of the stuff you haven't been implementing.
Bingo.
So you might do this work and all of a sudden actually get a return on the $5,000 investment of other programs or other information that you've learned that you haven't implemented because this work hasn't been done. So maybe eSchool is the thing that allows you to unlock all the other things that you've learned but haven't implemented because you only had knowledge but not understanding.
Yeah, because it's unlocking your body.
It's unlocking you. So many people are focused on just marketing without understanding the marketer. So whenever anybody asks us, what should I do? We're like, who are you?
Yeah.
Who are you? What do you teach? What's the knowledge that you have in your body? What are the lessons? What's your individual song to sing? Who are you sharing this with? Where are they? Who are they? What do they really want? Without the understanding underneath, without the knowledge, without the alignment in the marketer, which is you as the business owner, marketing doesn't matter. Because chances are you're following the marketing for the wrong marketer.
Yeah. One of the things that you say in this conversation is it's not only that it doesn't matter, is that it's actually dangerous. It's dangerous to your spirit. It's like trying to swim inside of the undertow that we were talking about at the beginning of the video. It's actually dangerous.
Yeah, that's a really good connection to that analogy. It's actually dangerous. When you're in the undertow, you have to get to oxygen.
Yeah.
If you exhale before you get to the oxygen, you're actually putting your body in a state of embodied panic.
Yeah.
And when we are panicked, in that state of disorientation, your body uses the oxygen differently. Your muscles fatigue faster. Yeah. And it's the way that we are operating in that moment. Yeah. And if that doesn't make sense to you because you missed the analogy early on, go watch the early part of the video where we talk about the literal analogy of being in the undertow of giant waves in the ocean and disorientation. Because this is one of the most powerful analogies that I ever learned. And I'm really glad you just added that danger from a marketing standpoint to this, because we might be in the right place or we might be experiencing the thing that we have to experience, but we're exhaling or trying to swim and we expel our oxygen and we fatigue our muscles and we actually never make it to the oxygen that we need above the surface. And so many people are in some form of that metaphorically with their business.
Yeah. Mm.
Whoo! All right. Well, I know we want to keep this under an hour.
Yeah.
So hopefully you all were watching this on like 2.5 speed. Because if you were, then it was under an hour.
I think they're just waiting for you to send me money on Venmo. Isn't that why you have your thing open?
Still no notification.
Well, I think you have to send the money to me, and then you'll get notified.
Right.
That you sent
And
it.
only one of us promised to send money to the other.
I'm not sure I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're distracted.
Did Coach Chad promise you that? It sounds like something he would do.
Chad is a distractor, a distractor. He is the marketer underneath the marketing. Chad is the distractor underneath the distracting.
Perfect.
And I say that with admiration. Game, recognize game.
Yes, we love Chad.
All right, everyone. Hopefully there's been something valuable in this for you.
Yeah.
And we want you to implement.
Hashtag short videos by Sean.
Hey, short is a relative term.
Amen.
This is short compared to at least 50 other videos on our channel.
That's
so this
right.
one is short ones. It's all comparison.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
One of the reasons, I just want to end with this thought, and it just ties up a lot of the things that we talked about and just highlights some of the things that we specifically said. One of the main reasons that we don't implement is because we lack the understanding. We have the knowledge, but not the understanding.
Yeah.
When we don't implement our knowledge, it's because we don't have understanding.
Yeah.
Meaning you get it, but you don't got it.
Whew.
You get it, you have knowledge, but you don't got it because you're not implementing the knowledge. And until you got it, then it actually doesn't matter what knowledge we collect. Because nobody has a knowledge deficit. We have an implementation deficit. So let me say that another way to be a little bit more soundbiteable. Nobody has an information deficit. We have an implementation deficit. But one of the reasons we have the implementation deficit is because we have an understanding deficit. That's what we hope you got out of something here. And we hope you put into motion for your aligned journey.
And for the people you want to serve.
That will provide a lot of your fuel.
Yeah.
You'll do a lot more to make a difference than you will to make a dollar. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. If you're joining us in eSchool, then we can't wait to welcome you. If you're already in eSchool, then we can't wait to continue supporting you and facilitating. If you have any questions whatsoever about eSchool, about any of the content that we gave here, then go ahead and post a comment here. You can register for a free one-on-one consultation with our company also. If you go to coachshansmith.com/book my call, you can do that. We'll drop a link here in the comment section. There it is. And we'll talk to you real soon.
Take care, everyone.